Hi, I'm Dan Bors. I'm with Curnayn Sales and I represent Gerber Plumbing Fixtures. I want to talk to y'all today just a little bit about the basics of a toilet, the components that go into it, and the basics on how a toilet flushes. So hopefully I give you a good understanding here. Basically, we got a toilet tank and we have a toilet bowl. The tank is no more than a holding reservoir for the water. So it just sits there until somebody hits the handle and then all the action starts. There are what we call tank trim, because the toilet itself, the bowl itself and the tank are made out of vitreous china, which is material that is formed and it's produced, and then it's put through a kiln, and then we can get our finished product, and then we put tank trim into it. The tank trim consists of a tank lever that starts the action. You know, after you do your business, you go ahead and hit the tank lever, and then what that does is that goes ahead and that's connected to a flush valve with a flapper. And the flush valve with the flapper, this is what mounts in the bottom of the toilet. And with the flapper, Gerber, my brand, we use all 3-inch flush valves. Now, back in the day, when there were 3.5 gallon toilets and all that, before we went to the 1.6 back in the 90s, they used to all be 2-inch flush valves. And in the beginning stages, early stages of the lower consumption toilets, we were still working with those, and as technology and engineering developed, we found that going to a larger throat on the flush valve, it delivers the water and starts the action faster to get everything going. So this is a 3-inch diameter here on the flush valve with the flapper. On flappers, there are 2 different styles that are typically used in the industry, and we actually use both. On our lower end, our price point builder series, Maxwell in that, we use what is called a soft flapper, where the entire flapper is soft, and it's got this little baffle in there which pops up and fills with water. It's got a vent hole here, and based on the diameter of this, it allows the flapper to fill and only allow 1.6 or 1.28 gallons of water to pass through out of the tank into the bowl. One of the only downfalls of this is they are chemically resistant but not chemical proof, so higher chlorinated water or different cleaning additives, which you're not supposed to put in the toilet tank, can warp these and cause them not to seal on the flush valve, and then you need to replace them. On our Viper and Avalanche series, we use a little bit more expensive of one that we call a rigid flapper, that then has a seal, a silicone seal, and what this does is this helps protect against chemical attack because it won't warp as much, because you've got a nice hard base here to help protect it and keep it from warping out of its round shape and sealing onto the flush valve. So, like I said, we hit the tank lever and the flapper comes up, water exits, and it starts the flush, and I'm going to talk about that, the 3 stages of the flush. After it flushes, then the flapper closes back up. What happens is the fill valve, which we use Fluidmaster 400As in our toilets. These are the most used replacement fill valves, so that's why we put them in our toilets as a standard. And the way this works is this is hooked up to your incoming supply on the bottom of the tank, and water starts to fill, and this is called a pilot valve, okay, because it has a positive shutoff here with this piston. Back in the old days, some of you remember pulling a tank lid and there was an arm coming off the fill valve with a big ball. That technology is older, and they didn't always seal right, where this piston valve seals up much better. And so what happens is, as the water fills up, it causes this float to rise, and you can adjust that to the desired length of the manufacturer marks inside the tank to make sure you have the right amount of water in there. And then once it hits that point, it hits the piston and shuts it off. It's got this tube here that goes into the overflow of the flush valve, And what that does is while it's filling, water not only fills from the bottom here to fill the tank, it also comes through this fill hose, and that's what fills the bowl back up after the flush happens. Another thing this flush valve does, This is a safety thing as well, whereas if this did not shut off, instead of the tank overfilling and dropping onto the ground, it would actually go down. This is your overflow too, your safety overflow, which is then going to just send the water down into the bowl and down the drain line so we don't do damage to the floors. So you got your fill valve, your flush valve with your flapper, and your trip lever. When you go ahead and put, typically a lot of toilets, I'd say a good 85+% are two-piece toilets. So like I said, you have your tank and your bowl. You have components that are provided with the tank. And one of them is, because this bottom half here with this nut is what's going to be showing on the bottom of the tank, and this big oversized gasket here is going to go here, and this is going to seal between the tank and the bowl so that no water, while we do our flush, is allowed to get out. It can only go down the bowl. We connect the tank and bowl. The way Gerber does it is we do a 2-bolt system. We use brass bolts, and we do 2 nuts on each of them. And the reason we do that, we also have these little U-channels, so these would mount on the back of the bowl, and this adds as a cushion between that and the seal gasket. That's why we make it so thick, so it's a cushion so we aren't China on China and can cause a crack. Then you have your 2-bolt system with double nuts on each. You would got this seal here. This would go through the tank, and we'd go ahead and put 1 nut on, and then that way we have a permanent seal. And then also, once we get those in there, we got 2 nice rigid bolts, which are going to line up perfectly with the holes, so these aren't walking on you and fishing and causing aggravation. And then we go ahead and we put our second set of nuts on there, and you just hand tighten these up real tight. Okay, what's nice about the dual nut system is if you ever had to pull that tank off, you don't have to completely empty the bowl, because we are going to never break that seal right here. So you can just flush it and drain it down and then take the tank off and dump it down the sink. So those are the components of the tank. The bowl, then we have to set the bowl onto the floor, and you set that on a closet flange. I've got an old style brass flange here. A lot of them nowadays are plastic, but these are still available as well. So what this does is this mounts onto your piping that goes into the drain system, and then we have our closet bolts, and a lot of the bolts you get a double nut system, and then what they do is they just go ahead and you get some washers in here, and this slides in here. And on a double nut system, we would go ahead and we would get these set onto the closet flange, 2 of them. Then we take our bowl, set it on top, take our second set of washers and nuts, and we would tighten that down and tighten that, and that's what secures the bowl to the floor there. Okay, so those are the components of the toilet itself.